All right. Welcome to building websites that work everywhere. I hope you have a great break. My name is Doris Chen. For those of you who may not know me, I'm a developer evangelist at Microsoft. And here is some of my contact information. Actually, let me move on to my next slide. Most of the time, I post my presentation in my blog. This is not my blog address, but most of the time, I don't remember my URL either. But if you do a search, Doris Chen space MSDN, you should see the most likely top 2 links. One of them is my blog address. You could also reach me on Twitter, as well as through my email, which is standard doris.chen@microsoft.com. So I'm a web person. I have been with Microsoft for about 5 years. And I'm focused on HTML, JavaScript, all the web technology. Before that, I was a Java evangelist at a Sun Microsystem for about 10 years. So I started with as a Java person. I actually like to get some of your background. I know this is HTML5 DevConf, so I would assume all of you have some exposure to HTML5 JavaScript already. All right. Do we have some like absolute beginners here? All right, a couple of you. OK, that's fine. OK, as you can see, we have about 45 minutes, and it's a pretty busy agenda. So we're going to go over a few things which will be important to help you develop a website that will be across all browsers, including the legacy browsers as well as the modern browsers. So first thing is, what are the testing tools? How we could use the tools to do the cross-browser testing. The other things we want to talk about is CSS3 and the prefix, and what other things you need to watch out. And then we're going to talk about if you've done browser detection, is it a good way to do? Should you move on to something else? And then we're going to actually focus on talk about feature detection. And obviously, we live in a big world. It's not just modern browsers we're supporting. There are a lot of legacy old browsers, right? And we will talk about what would be a good way to do polyfills, and then to do the fallbacks. So you ready? All right, let's get started. So first thing first, a lot of times it would be always good to have some tools to measure your behavior, your website behavior in different browsers. Now let's take a look at this particular sort of like a slide. And it's a very nice site, Hawaiian Airlines. And we do see quite a bit of behavior content generation in terms of Firefox, Safari, and IE. So obviously, this website may need some fix, because it does give us different kind of content, different kind of behavior. So it's not very nice when you design a website and finally people, end users, see things like that. Now, before I go any further, I'm actually going to do a lot of demo on our new browser, which is a default browser for Windows 10. It's called Edge. I want to take a look. How many of you have moved on or tried Edge? OK, very good. So I'm actually going to talk about what is one of the biggest design principles behind Edge. If you look at this diagram, right? So most people say the behavior of your content will look similar with Chrome and Firefox. And then probably say, on the other side is Firefox and, I'm sorry, I should say Chrome and Safari, they have more like a close behavior. And then the Firefox and IE used to have the similar behavior. Now, the design principle for Edge, this is our new logo for Edge, and if you look at that, is we want to remove all the IE-specific code as much as possible. And we want to actually support more the overlapping among all the browsers. So interoperability is really something really, really important in our design principle for Edge. We basically want to reduce all the IE and then getting more cross-session or overlap session and getting more support for Chrome and Firefox. So this is just sort of the design principle, and you will see it when I do the demo using Edge and Chrome and some other browsers. Now, one thing, you probably will ask, what are the tools I could use to start the testing, right? There are quite a few really useful tools. Most of the tools I recommend here, those are free tools. For example, side scan. I will do a very quick demo, let you to see if you enter a URL of a particular site, you will see what might be the problems, what are the things for you to improve your site. And again, it's free, and we'll see that in just a couple minutes. And also, there is another tool called browser screenshots, because this is actually a very useful tool. It's free. You could actually see all the your site, running in different browsers, in different versions, including modern and old browsers. So you could take a look if your site is really developed across different browsers. There's also, if you want to test, i.e., from 6 to 11, you want to test IE on a virtual machine, there is a free site for you to actually get into the Windows virtual machine. You could actually get in a virtual machine and install all the IE version and do a testing. Now, there's another one which is called Browser Stack. How many of you heard about that? It's a very useful tool. It's a paid kind of like a tool, but it does provide you some really useful online service. So that because it's online, so you don't have to install your own virtual machine, right? So you could actually use the online tool to actually figure out which is a browser you want to test. But of course, it's a paid version. All right, let me actually start to showing you one of the free tools. Again, all the tools is under dev.modern.ie. And then if you take a picture from previous slide, there's a URL there. But if not, it's fine. If you go to the tools, right, this is actually our central Edge development site. And you could see a lot of different information. But what I'm showing you here is some of the free tools. All the tools here are free. So you could see a bunch of them, virtual machines, the side scan, which I'm about to show you, browser screen snapshots, and as well as F12 tools. Now, how many of you heard about F12 tools? It is actually part of the Edge as well as IE, right? So you could do a lot of monitoring, performance, checking, and JavaScript onto that. All right, so I just figured out I would just choose a conference website as a guinea pig. And let's actually run this particular site and see what kind of result we get. This is a side scan tool. You just enter the URL. And then what you see here is you want to pay attention to the modern web interoperability. This is actually pretty good. We're doing fine with render mode. It's HTML5. And then with the same markup, I didn't really see any legacy plugins. For example, use Silverlight, VB, ActiveX, all those legacy plugins. So in Edge, PDF and Flash are supported. So, but in the long run, we should get rid of all the plugins. We should make it really, say for example, if we do video, we should just do the HTML5 video, right? Instead of just using all the legacy plugins. Frameworks and the libraries are something, this will tell you if you use some really old library, for example, jQuery, maybe you could move on to the most compatible jQuery library instead of use your current version. And then this site is good. It did not use any browser detection, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Well, it does have some warning for the CSS prefix. So it also gives you a list of, I don't know if how many you could see it, and let me make it a little bigger. So it does tell you in which line, and then, for example, I choose a particular one called box sizing. And in this particular CSS, they probably use a prefix called WebKit, but they did not maybe put a final version, which should be just box sizing. Because of that, your WebKit is a prefix of that CSS. So it may work well for any of the browsers supported WebKit, but for the other browsers, for say Microsoft MS, Mozilla, Opera, those things, they don't have prefix. So that particular CSS may not work well for those browsers. So this will actually just give you all the sort of warning or alert to tell you what are the CSS features you did not implement the prefix correctly. And we'll talk about that in more detail. So basically, these are all the major things we're looking to for site scan. If you could actually get a ticks for every single one of them, then your site will be running really across all the browsers. Okay, sounds good? All right. Now, the other thing I want you to check, this is called, it's also one of the tools called screenshots. And you could see, depends on the version you want, you could see the behavior of HTML5DevConf in different particular browser, what it will look like. You do see quite a bit of difference when we get into the legacy browsers and older browsers. And these are the things, if you want to support all those browsers, you need to fix. Right? So this tool gives you a good sort of overview for all the major browsers, including the legacy browsers. All right, so hopefully you get some idea how to use the tools to actually first test your website. Let's actually move on. And we talk about, since we talk about one of the problems, one of the actually pretty major problem for most of the website is the CSS3 and the vendor prefix. And how many of you never heard about a vendor prefix? Like, why do we need it? Okay, all right, so CSS3 is really part of the HTML5 standard, right? And there are different kind of proposals standard for that CSS3 feature. But from a proposal become a final, it always have some period of time. But then browsers also try to implement all the bleeding edge features there. So they will say, okay, because it's not final yet, so I will put some prefix to represent different implementation for different browser. Hence, we have the CSS prefix. Now, so for, say, Microsoft-related browser, we'll have MS, Mozilla, Mouse, Opera O, and then Safari and other like Chrome, they all use WebKit. So you probably see WebKit quite a lot. But at the same time, don't forget, if you ever have any particular CSS3 feature, you should always put the feature without any prefix, non-prefix. And we'll show you some example why it's important. So the way to implement any of those CSS3 feature is you always put the non-prefix version in the CSS, and then you could use some of the tools to generate all the prefix for different browsers. So that way you wouldn't feel, it's kind of tedious. I have to generate all 4 different prefix, right? So let's actually talk about those tools. But before that, I'd like to actually give you a little quick thing about when you need to worry about CSS prefix, when you don't have to worry about CSS, right? How many of you are using CSS3? All right, very good. So all the things listed here, yes, you do need to have to put prefix there, including animation, box sizing, I talk about with a site, frax box, frax layout, CSS region, transition, transform, grid, filter, all those things, you do need to put a prefix when you actually use that in your website. Now, these are the things you don't have to worry about prefix anymore. Border radius, right? A lot of people use that because the designer says, they said, Doris, if your design is not round at a corner, it's not a good design. So we need to use border radius. I don't know if it's true or not. So anyway, so border radius, no, don't worry about prefix, box shadow, font face, opacity, text shadow, and so on. All those things, you don't have to worry about that, right? So that's good. Now, next is probably you would say, okay, you said that there are some tools to help us to generate all the prefix, so I don't have to worry about that, right? So if you use all those features like box size, transition, frax box, you just have to put the final CSS, the say, box size, right? And then you could leave some of the tools to help you to do the generation. For example, auto prefixer. How many of you use that? Okay, auto prefix is pretty nice. It will actually, once you give the final CSS3 feature, non-prefix version, they will generate all the prefix version for you. And the idea is they're getting all the prefix from a site called caniuse.com. They're based on that to give you the prefix. Again, most likely, I will show you a one which is online, which is use this link. But most likely, how many of you use a grunt? Most likely, people actually put it in a grunt build script. So you could actually take advantage of that. Another one which is also a lot of people use is prefix free, right? This is also providing you a very nice way for you to generate all the additional prefix. All right, let's go to this site. We'll tell you. So this is the auto prefix CSS online. You may not be able to see the detail. Hopefully it's a little better. And if you could actually see it here, And let's actually just use one of the example. For example, transition, right? This is the one you need to worry about, the CSS3 prefix. So if you put a transition, then on the tool itself, you would determine they need to put a WebKit for transition, and then for user select, for example, they will use it for WebKit user, Mozilla, Microsoft, and so on. However, the key thing you have to pay attention here is you want to make sure you put a just non-prefix version. For example, if I do, let's do this. If I do things like that, right? What's going to happen is the tool wouldn't be able to know what is this WebKit-user select. So instead of give you all the prefix like we showed before, it just keep on just copying that WebKit user select. So you wouldn't be able to generate all the prefix for you. So be careful, do not put any prefix in your original form. Let the tool to generate the prefix for you. So if we put it back, yes, everything is all generated here, right? So this is something you may need to watch out when you use those tools, right? So, but it's really make our life easier. We don't have to worry about all the tedious prefix, right? Just put a final feature there. It's all there, and then everything the tool will work the rest out for you. So this is very handy, and let's actually move on. This is a way you could fix all the CSS prefix issue. And the other things I want to talk about are the browser detection. Now, if you look at this particular, obviously you cannot read them all, right? It's kind of small font. But let me just point out a few old browsers. How many of you still remember Netscape? Very good. This is a crowd I'm working. Okay, how many of you still using IE6? Right, we all say IE6 is dead, but you have to use some OS and then you sort of stuck with that. But there's another version I never heard of. It says Safari on Windows 5.3 Maxon Edition. Anybody heard of that? Anyway, all right, okay, I never heard of that. But if you look at all those different versions, different browsers, and there's a percentage, obviously don't overtrust the hard number, it's changing all the time, right? But I'm just saying, we live in a big world. There's so many different browsers, different versions there. And it is really a full-time job to hire anybody to test your website against old browsers. It's really a full-time job, but it's so tedious. Look at how many of browsers are there, right? Think about your testing case. You have to install all the browsers on your test machine. Think about the workload, right? So really, it is really not a good idea. I would say it might be a full-time job, it might be high pay, but that's not a job I want, right? So, because you just have to sort of tedious test every single one of the browsers, make sure all the logic working behind is correct. It's not an easy job, right? It's not. So, and the other things I want to point out is, you go back to your code. You may be doing some browser detection. You're checking the version of that browser. If it's IE6, if it's IE8, you may be doing something like that, right? If it's a Safari, then what you're going to do for your mobile website or things like that. So the other things a lot of people did is called user agent. How many of you actually heard about a user agent? All right, very good. I could skip. So user agent, this is something is always in the header, and then the way we actually want to be watch out is called UA sniffing. So I'll just give you some idea. All the browsers says they're going to support each other. This is just a diagram to show you the user agent string in different browser, right? So you could see the pick from Netscape, Gecko, and so on. And then one thing, you probably haven't seen the US string from Edge, so I thought it would be interesting to list it here. So what you see here is, this is a Chrome user agent, and then this is Edge user agent. So all the user agent, basically we fully compatible with all the Chrome user agent, and adding something called the Edge /12.0. So in other words, if the site is running in Chrome, should be fully compatible running on Edge, because all the UA string is exactly the same, right, for these two. Okay, so I'll just give you some idea for the UA string. And then what is the problem with UA string sniffing is, a lot of people just use that. This is a very sort of typical example, people use. They would say, if it's IE, then they would say, if it's IE version 7, then think about all the logic, right? You could have start of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? So you could actually, if you do this kind of US sniffing, you end up with a lot of logic. You have the checking, a lot of version you have the checking, and it's really hard to maintain, right? And really, it's really not a good way to do that. And so that's why we want to talk about our next subject, which is feature detection. So like we said, browser detection is not going to work. There's so many different versions. There's so many things. And then feature detection, the concept is way more clear, way more smart. Basically, I don't care how many versions of browsers in this world. All I care about is if this particular feature is going to support or not in that browser. So only two things we need to check. Supported in the browser, not supported in the browser, regardless of what kind of browser you're using, right? So in that sense, feature detection is so much clear, so much simple, very easy to maintain. Anybody could understand. If yes, I do this. If no, I do the other thing, right? So very, very clear. Now, all the feature detection, most likely, it's using the standard-based features, HTML5, CSS3, all those new features we use feature detection to determine how they're going to actually run in different browsers. So let's look at one example before actually we get into the detail of feature detection. If we look at this, so this is a very, I think it's from my old code. What I'm checking here is I'm checking to use end event listener versus using attach event, right? So the logic of what I put here is I said, if it's not IE, right, then they must use add event listener, right? And then I'll do something, right? And then if it's IE, use attach event, right? But if you look at the code, is it a good logic? Is it a good way to do things like this? All right, I'll give you a hint. So IE started with 8, 9, all the way to 11. Do use add event listener, right? So if this is the logic, then we'll say, what happened to IE all the way 8 to 11 when they does support add event listener? This particular, these browsers will have no way to fit into this logic, right? So this is really bad. Why? Because it's still doing browser detection. It still says if it's IE, then it's using attach event. If it's not IE, it's using add event listener. So this is no good. This is still using a browser detection, right? So what would be a better way of doing that? This would be much better. I'm just checking add event listener, yes or no. So here I says, if that browser support add event listener, then I do something, right? If the browser support attach event, then I do something. So that would be much more clear. All I testing here is add event listener or attach event. There's no browser version detection involved. It's all basically method checking or feature detection, right? Get an idea? All right, very good. Now, in my opinion, Modernizer is our friend. It's probably one of the best ways to do feature detection. How many of you have tried Modernizer? Yeah, it's very easy to use. And then it is basically, for those of you who haven't tried that, it will detect all the HTML5 and the CSS3 feature. And the good thing about that is that particular site is updating all the new feature all the time, right? So that actually, you could actually just rely on that to do your feature detection to see if a browser will support that feature or not. And then you could actually, with a current Modernizer, you actually could have your own testing case, your testing scripts to make it more powerful to test your particular website. And the Modernizer also support prefix, which is basically say, if that particular new feature is not supported in that version of browser, then what is the sort of like some other code I could use to mimic this kind of feature? We'll talk about that prefix in more detail. But let's actually take a look at screen snapshots. This is from Modernizer. Now, a lot of you probably worry about, at the start of time, I have included so many different libraries into my page. I don't want to hurt my performance, right? I don't want actually a huge library right in the front just because I want to check all the features. So Modernizer is actually designed in such a way that you could actually build your customized Modernizer checking, meaning you all probably know what are the new features, maybe 10, right, features, new features used on your website. So you could actually pick all the features from the list. Say, for example, I want to use touch events. I want to use SVG. I want to use HTML5 video. I may want to use a WebGL. You know, all those checking, all the library will be built into a customer-side modernizer. So you could use that instead of a big one, right, to check all your new features. Now, one thing I want to point out is this is a party view. So for example, if I select to check in the WebGL, the modernizer also provides you some of the party views with different implementation so that you could use if that particular feature is, say, WebGL is not supported in your browser, then what other party views you could use to replace that, to mimic the WebGL feature. Right. So this is actually a pretty cool thing in Modernizer. How many of you have used the party views from Modernizer? Yeah, a lot. Very good. Okay, so this is a way we could actually keep a Modernizer or the library checking very slim. And then obviously there are multiple ways to do things. This is the one from some of the code is try to do add font face. And then obviously those are working, right? Those are working code. But would you rather to check the feature called a font face like this, or would you like to do something like this? Right? So this is actually a modernizer way to do things. Very simple. Put in a modernizer, put the feature you want to check, and then you could carry on your logic. If yes, then do something. If no, then, right? So very, very easy. Okay, let's actually just do a quick demo to demonstrate its basic approval concept. So what I have here is I actually have, I'm using two features, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But the modernizer and all those library would be very easy. Just put it in your link in your script level, in your HTML. And then this is what I check. What I say here is I say I want to make sure my browser is supporting Canvas. I want to make sure my browser is supporting HTML5 audio. If both these features are supported, then I'm going to run something. It's a Canvas kind of application. If not, then I'll do something else, right? So let's actually give a run, and let's run this app. We could try it in Edge. Okay. So quite nice. We see the canvas is dancing with all the background audio, everything, because this Edge is supporting all the audio and the canvas feature. Nice. And obviously, I'm using Visual Studio 2015. This is a free community edition. Anybody could get it. And it does allow you to actually run in different browsers. For example, I could run in Chrome, right? And we do expect same behavior. Audio and the canvas both are running. All right. Now, I want to actually show you how it will behave in the older browsers. So actually, let's actually choose IE, right? We could do default IE, which is IE 11. So IE 11 is working fine. It supports Canvas as well as the audio. Now, I'm going to actually use a tool called F12. So I hit F12 tools, and it will give you all the browser-based nice utility. But one thing I want to do is I want to change the dark mode into, you guys tell me you want to pick 5 or 7. Let's do IE7, right? So okay, so this is IE7. Obviously, it does not support the Canvas and the HTML5 audio. So if that's the case, then I ask to do something else. In this case, it's a bunch of cute hamsters dancing, right? So if those features are working, we show the canvas dancing. If not, then it's hamster dancing. Of course, this is a proof of concept. It's kind of fun, right? But you get an idea. This is how you could actually develop, do the feature detection, and make it across all browsers. Sounds good? All right, very good. Okay, so let's actually go back to talk about the party views. So obviously, my previous demo, the party views is actually all the hamsters are dancing, right? But not in real life, right? You cannot put all those as your party views, right? But let's actually look into that. So what are the party views? Party views is basically nothing more than a bunch of JavaScript, HTML, CSS kind of code. It is a library to mimic that feature. If that feature is not supported correctly in that browser, right? So basically, they try to support all the missing features in the older browser, right? So this is one thing. And then it is really provide a very nice way for you to gracefully support from one modern browser and then maybe fall back into some old browsers so that your customer, your end users wouldn't feel such a dramatic change in your site. They will see pretty consistent look and feel across all the browsers, either it's modern new browser or it's really old browser. So, and then part of use, like I said, there's a lot of ways you could do that. You could go to Modernizer to check out some of the part of use to see which one would work in your browser really nice. There's also a way you could do a manual kind of part of use. For example, I'm supporting a local storage, right? And then I would just say if this local storage is not supported, which is the HTML5 feature, then I could just manually operate all those storage on my site. So this is a manual way to do that. And also, you could have a really neat way, if you're actually getting part of use from the Modernizer, you could actually see it. Like, for example, I'm testing the geolocation here, right? So the syntax is very simple. You have a Modernizer load, and the testing condition is my geolocation. If it's yes, then I'm going to run with the code with the geo support. If not, then I'm going to fill with the geo part of view code to run that. So this is actually the logic or sort of like the syntax you would do to run your part of views. Sounds good? All right. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay, so let's actually take a look a quick example of this part of view example. This is a video tags. Actually, before we actually go into a detailed example, I would actually like to sort of like have a little discussion or give you some ideas about use part of use using feature detection. Really, it is your code, let's say, right? So a lot of people just say, I work with maybe a financial institution, and it doesn't look like we're going to move on to the most current modern browsers that easily, right? What I'm going to do with my old code, I still stay with the old browsers, right? It's pretty common. So there are a few things you need to look into. First of all, you don't need to trash all your legacy code. You could always sort of like package it into a part of view kind of format. But at the same time, you should actually prepare for the future browsers, which is using the Modernizer feature detection to implement those things which will run in the future browser, but then still keep your legacy as a part of you so that you could support all the older browsers. And really, maintainability, all the logic, is something you do really have to sort of watch out in your implementation, because maybe, I don't know how often people change a job, but a lot of times, you need to look into maintainability because maybe the previous developer just left the team, and you end up with there's not a very well documented thing. You have to fix everything by yourself. So in that sense, I think in general, it will be a good practice, right, to use the feature detection, all the syntax, all the format to implement your website. But again, it's your site, right? You get to decide. Maybe you don't have this kind of client to support, then you could restrict your sort of support into certain things. So it's really something you have to play a balance of act. Do not trash all the old code, but at the same time leverage them, but then also build some modern kind of like code to support new browsers in the future. Right, so that's sort of like one thing I think is important to mention. All right, so I think most of you heard about HTML5 audio video, right? No? All right. Okay, really, it is very easy to use HTML5 audio video. They use basically scripting, non-scripting markup kind of language, right? So audio, you just have to use the HTML5 audio, and you just have to specify where that audio URL is. You could do a preload to start downloading for the performance sake. You could let it autoplay if it's needed. But most of the time, you should turn it off just for user experience because you don't want all the music, everything, suddenly, when people change to that site and all of a sudden start playing that. A few scenarios would be better is, you're in a meeting and you forget to mute your microphone, your boss is talking and you're doing web browsing and all of a sudden background noise is on. And then that's not very nice. So usually we turn it off and you could play as a loop. You could play the controllers. Basically, we just show play, forward, pause, backward, all the normal stuff. That's for the audio. Video is pretty much the same, but video has a little size, right? So you do have to specify what's the width and height. And then one thing is video has an option for you to enter a poster. That's because if you have a big video to load, you don't want people to stare at a blank screen all the time so that they were wondering if that video is going to play or not. So you could use a poster. It's a screen snapshot from your video to show it there so people will know, it's just loading. I could wait for that. Okay, so again, HTML5 video and audio will give you the best experience in terms of implementing those. And I'll just give you a quick sort of like a table to summarize all the compatible audio and video for you to use. So if you look at that briefly, MP3 is your friend. It's basically supported in all the browsers, right? So I'm listing here Edge, IE, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, and Opera. So, and then you will see web is actually not supported in IE, and then also AAC, you have to watch out because the Firefox did not really support that unless you have a plugin to do that. So again, MP3 is your friend. If you want to implement some audio, this will make sure it's across all the browsers. Video. Okay, this is a summary of the video. And if you look at that, you will see the H.264 video MPEG-4 is your friend because it does support across all browsers, right? And then if you maybe sort of like want to use a WebN, and then you need to watch out some browser may not support it at all. And again, OGG is also not really supported across all the browsers. So if you happen to have all those resources, right, for audio or video, make sure even though you have some other audio video format, but make sure give them, like for audio, you should do MP3. For video, you should always give MP4, right? Now, one thing, I don't know if you noticed that, is if you use HTML5 video, what you will see here is there is a very nice design, what we call fallback. Meaning, if I run this video with, say, source, a video with MP4 file, and if that particular browser does not support HTML5 video, then this things, which is called a fallback content in the middle, is going to show. So what will it render? This is something it's going to show, right? So you will know if that browser does not support HTML5 video, then you need to implement something in the middle so that it will run cross browsers with all the old browsers, right? So that's what you do. So for example, a lot of people, you could still keep the video on top of that. And at the same time, people could use either Silverlight plugin or Fresh plugin, especially Fresh. A lot of people use that. So you could actually use simple JavaScript, right, to put up Fresh players so that your video could still be played in the older browsers. And I'll show you an example in the next demo. Okay, so this is basically called the fallback. It will allow you to actually implement all the code with support for both modern browser as well as for the older browsers. Now, I actually want to share with you a real website. This website is live, it's running, right? So let's actually take a look. I will try to run in multiple browsers. Now, look at this. This is called world.hiphop.com. It is basically has a lot of interesting video clips for different stars, for the movie clips, all those things. This is an entertainment center. And it's live, right? Now, I'm a person like to have high security. So I actually turn off all the plugins, right? So if I look at that, you look at this, I'm supposed to see a little trailer, movie trailer, but I don't see it here, right? Probably because it's using Fresh or some other plugins, right? And then if you look at that, it's not very user-friendly, right? For any site, if you see something like a little like a blank and you see some link, you know it's supposed to play with something, but it's not, right? And the people say, oh, this is Edge, right? How about in the Chrome? Let's take a look. This is a Chrome, and has a very similar behavior. I don't really see anything there. So if you dig into a little more, you will find they probably use Fresh, right? Now, this is fine. And you probably want to convince your customers to say, hey, I want to fix this site. I want to help you to fix the site. And your customer will say, It's not broken. Do not change it. It's live. It's running. I don't want you to actually, fix it to break anything, right? So there's actually a better way, sort of like, to help them to go through that. What I choose to use is Fiddler. How many of you heard about Fiddler? Fiddler has a very nice way to capture all of your HTTP requests, as well as to modify your response. So instead of you see this particular response, you will see what you want this response to be. So this is what I'm doing. I'm calling a Fiddler. Okay, hopefully the network is running properly. And let me actually just reload this piece of code. All right, so now I actually capture a lot of HTTP requests. And I'm actually looking for one which might be interesting, which is the video playing. So this is, again, the HTTP request I capture from Fiddler. And I'm actually going to change the response. So I'm dragging that particular, oh, somebody is calling me, ignore. See, this is always happening. Not many people try to contact me, but usually when I'm doing presentation, they try to contact me. Anyway, okay, let's do the, so here, let's look into this response, right? So for Fiddler, if you could install a syntax view, things would be so much easier. Let me see if I could change the format, the font just a little bit better. So this is basically all the generated response. It's in HTML format, and you could actually see it. So what I want to do is first, I want to make sure I'm going to the title. You may not see it clearly. Let me see if I could make it a little bigger. All right. All right, so here, better? So if you see a title, I could actually say, I put a test there because it's my test response, right? And then, when it's too big, I could, then go to the save button. I try to save it. Now let's go back to that particular browser. If I click on that, and I'll show you a little larger, you will see the test is here. This is what I add into that page. That means, yes, I'm working on the right side, right page, right? Okay, then let's go back to the code to do more fix. So like I said, what I want to do here is I want to actually figure out where the plugin is. I want to actually change it to make it HTML5 video compatible. So here, I'm actually searching for a particular area with the right code. What I want to implement here is I want to put video. Okay, controls. And let me put a source. So I'm looking underneath this particular a fresh video and try to find a source here. And luckily, this is a source I could find. And I put it here inside of my source. Okay, and then also like to actually put some style. Make it 100%. All right, after do that, close with another video tag. And then one thing I do is I actually want to move all the, just for the fallback, right? I want to move all the, oops, fresh player, move the code into here, right? Let me fix just a little bit. And then I will actually put a one control, which is checking if the video is going to play well or not. Let me put it right at the beginning, and then put one more thing here. All right, I think that looked right. Let me actually show the code a little bigger. So here is what I do. I put a new video with all the video tag, put a style, put all the fresh as sort of like a fallback, and put it here. Hopefully it will run. Okay. Ooh, look at this. This is running properly. This is HTML5 video. And then we could really, just play it, right? And with the right size, everything, just by do a simple fix. All right? And you will say, what happened? This is in Edge. What happened in Chrome? Let's try to fix that. All right? Chrome looks fine. It's also HTML5 video, right? And one thing let me actually copy this one. I want to show you is just one more thing, which is IE, right? Let's try to see if it's running properly in IE, and also see if it could support in the old browser with a fresh player, right? So, looks like it's good. If you look at that, this is really HTML5 video. And if we do a F12 and keep changing it into some old browser, what's my guinea pig? 7 again. And you will see it will running. It will fall back into a fresh player, like I put it before, right? And then you could click on that. You will see it's go back to the fresh, right? So this is actually a fallback into an old browser for fresh, but the rest of them already changed it to the HTML5 video. Isn't that cool? Now, some people would just say, did you change my code or what? You know what? I actually just enforce it in the header. If I actually close my header, header, and then if you go back to this particular one, everything goes back to normal, to where it is, right? So I'm not really breaking your site, anything. I'm just giving you a nice way. You could try to do things in the header, change the response, show your customer and user, this is the way it's going to work, right? Pretty cool, right? All right. So, okay, so very good. Few takeaways. I hope you could use this technique. It's a lot of things you could do with Feeder, the generate different response, so that you could see it, what's going on without a break the site. Let the site run live. So we talk about avoid browser detection, avoid user agent sniffing. You should always install all the browsers and then use the tools to check, to take a look. And then feature detection is a friend. And you should always use feature detection. Change your old code from browser to feature detection. Modernizer is a friend. Look into that. Find out your own customer modernizer library. You could use a Polyfill there to fix that. And with that, thank you very much.